The story begins with a man sitting at his desk writing. He's frustrated, wondering why, even in a world of swords and magic, he still has to deal with the inefficiencies of paperwork. Despite his resentment, he realizes that there is no way around it, not even here. This man is Ragnar Brav, a noble from the frontier. Most of the people who lived in the mansion with him had already died in battle. Ragnar called Sea-Paws, the butler who had just arrived. He tried to get Sea-Paws to help him with the paperwork, but Sea-Paws reminded him that, regardless of his previous role, Ranya is now the new lord of the territory and must take responsibility for it. This land, the Brav territory, is located on the border. It is plagued by monsters, and border clashes with neighboring countries occur frequently. The harsh conditions have given it a reputation among the nobility as an abandoned land. Sebas commented that he was surprised that someone from Ranya's family could take care of the paperwork, since Ragnar's father and older brothers were all warriors. As the third son of the noble house, Ragnar had been extensively trained to kill monsters and enemy soldiers. But a month earlier, the war had ended the life of his entire family. Only he survived, and was abruptly appointed the new lord of the territory. Frustrated, Ranya threw the papers aside, expressing his desire to be exploring dungeons instead. As a third child, his original plan had been to live freely as an adventurer. However, Sea-Paws denied him that path, telling him that he still had one last duty to fulfill. Despite the territory's natural riches, monster materials, resources, and a population of adventurers, its development had been stagnant. Monster attacks made it difficult for the mountains to develop, and enemy nations took the newly sown fields. The territory had no capacity to be self-sufficient, and was completely dependent on the help of other nobles. That is why, as the heir, Ranya was to attend the Royal Academy in the capital. There he would have to build relationships with other nobles and secure their support for the land he now ruled. Doubt began to creep into Ranya's thoughts. Could I really achieve it? He wondered if, given his family's emphasis on martial training, he could refuse to enroll in the academy. But C-Peace immediately dismissed that idea. Ragnar then wanted to know what else had to be said to Pause. He informed her that there was another important matter. A proposal had arrived. Ragnar was surprised by how sudden it was. But Sebas assured him that, as a lord, such things were not uncommon. Ranya thought of her older brothers, who also had fiancés but never settled in the Brav territory. In fact, they didn't even attend the funeral. When he went to inform them of the deaths, their reactions were closer to relief than grief. As Ranya was writing, she wondered aloud if she should put an end to everything. Just then, his pen broke. Sebas, seeing his master's frustration, disapproved and told him that he seemed to be seriously considering abandoning the matter. Ragnar reflected on his next life. Soon he would live in a bedroom far away, in the royal capital, and would only return for long vacations to manage the territory. In short, your schedule would be overwhelmingly busy. He handed the broken pen to Baz and instructed her to reject the proposal on his behalf. However, Sebas firmly rejected the idea. This time, the marriage proposal came from the prestigious ducal Oldwood family, the same ones that currently supply the Grav territory with essential resources such as weapons and food aid. Ranya was visibly disturbed by the revelation. He pressed Sebas to clarify the noble rank of that family. Sebas explained that although they are technically counts, the marriage arrangement was still viable. At the mention of Old Wood, Ragnar paused. Something stirred inside him. He remembered that the trigger had been a long time ago when he was hit by an orc. That event rekindled a dormant memory of his past life. He was surprised that he had forgotten until now. He had reincarnated in the world of a game. I couldn't even remember the name of the game. But in his previous life, he had enjoyed the culture of a country called Japan. This world, his current reality, was that of an Otome game. A typical scenario where the protagonist, an ordinary girl, attends an academy full of nobles, and gradually falls in love with a possible suitor. But despite its romantic facade, the game was brutal. As he progressed, battles broke out so frequently that the royal capital became a war zone in the end. Ragnar recalled his deep frustration while playing. She often manifested her annoyance towards a particular character, the noble lady who always interfered. That was Alicia, the daughter of the Oldwood family. She was the villain of the story, the betrothed of the heir prince. Raised solely to become a queen. With unparalleled talents and impeccable appearance, she was at the top. But his personality was despicable, arrogant and elitist. He brought his entourage daily to humiliate the protagonist. As the relationship between the protagonist and the prince deepened, Alice's bullying intensified, culminating in a duel for the prince's affection. She lost miserably, and at that moment, the engagement was taken away from her. Ragnar dug deeper into his memories. What had happened to Alicia after her fall from grace? She recalled that she was forced to assume responsibilities and was sent to marry a border noble. That nobleman was from his family. Lying on his bed, Ragnar plunged into fear. The idea of sharing his life with that noble, Alicia, was suffocating to him. I imagined a living hell of constant verbal abuse, an atmosphere full of contempt, and that from now on, they would attend the academy together. The future seemed an absolute hopelessness. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Sebas informed him that the young lady was about to arrive. Rania, already putting on her coat, asked what was the reason for her visit. A lady raised only for the crown prince had no place in her remote home. He assumed it was probably a move to scrap her, to remove a political nuisance, and set a public example. Sebas solemnly acknowledged that, indeed, the Brav territory had an abnormally high mortality rate. After the war, the survivors worked until they were exhausted to maintain the territory, all in loyalty to the Brav family. Sebas reminded Ragnar that he too must fulfill his part. Ragnar accepted it in silence. He understood. Outside the house Brav, Ragnar and Sebas were waiting for each other while a carriage arrived. Ragnar's expression was difficult to describe, tense and uncertain, while Sebas maintained his usual calm posture next to his master. The carriage door opened, and Alice descended gracefully, assisted by her butler. As he came down, Rania saw a distinctive mark on his face, a burned scar, and he was visibly surprised. Sebas advanced quickly and introduced himself courteously. Alice, noticing Ragnar's reaction to her face, made a brief comment about it. When Ragnar asked what had happened to her, Alice did not answer, she just kept silent. Ragnar then assured her that if she didn't want to talk about the subject, that was fine. In the Brav territory, scars were not at all uncommon. This seemed to surprise Alice, who asked what he meant. Rania explained that scars were common among soldiers and adventurers in the area. He assumed that Alicia's burn was probably from the duel, an ugly scar that disfigured her formerly beautiful face. In high society, that would be seen as a mark of disgrace, a symbol that provokes rejection at first sight. A perfect stain for someone condemned to live a life of shame. Alicia seemed lost in thought when her butler announced that he was leaving. Ragnar noticed that Alice had arrived without a maid, and with only a modest piece of luggage. It was strange for someone of his rank. The butler got into the already empty carriage and departed. The simplicity of her arrival, a single bag, no chaperones, told Ragnar everything he needed to know about her current status. Alicia followed, while Sebas politely showed them the way inside. Ragnar couldn't shake the surprise. It was not what I expected at all. In her mind, she had imagined an arrogant and domineering woman, who attacked those below her. But there she was now, a girl, stripped of all pretense, behaving like a defeated soldier of a lost war. Once inside, Ragnar offered to guide Alice to her room, but as they were walking, he suddenly asked her to wait, and gently touched her shoulder. Alice hadn't noticed anything unusual and asked if she had any dust on her. He apologized, saying it must be his old clothes. Ragnar let out a small laugh and assured her that it was just that the house itself was getting more dusty. When Alice started walking again, Ragnar looked at what he had torn from her, what looked like a demonic bug. These insects were born from grudges, physical manifestations of curses, and those who were possessed by them were destined for misfortune. To his surprise, Ragnar noticed that dozens, almost 100 of those bugs, were clinging to Alice. Her number reflected the volume of hatred and malice directed towards her. Ragnar was stunned. For an ordinary person, such a curse would be enough to drive her crazy. But Alice remained serene. He had not succumbed to madness or disease. This forced Rania to reconsider her assumptions. As a noble raised to be a queen, really someone like her would come down so low as to publicly challenge a commoner to a duel. But this was the world of an Otome game, where logic was often bent by drama. An antagonist was necessary to advance the story, and Alicia had been molded for that role. His actions, his nature, might have been distorted by the very necessities of the narrative. Ragnar felt a hint of empathy. Both he and Alicia were victims of the design of this world, manipulated by a predetermined history. He remembered the rest of Alice's way. After breaking off her engagement, she continued to feed her hatred. Finally, he made a pact with a demon and turned into a monster. Although she was defeated, her revenge brought ruin to the entire Brava territory. And it wasn't just a route. In all the possible stories of the game, the Brab territory ended in war and destruction. Rania, who originally wasn't even part of the game, understood something terrifying. Alice's path would eventually collide with his, and it would end disastrously. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration. If everything was doomed no matter what, maybe he could try to change her fate, help her find another way. If things kept going wrong, I would have at least tried. If the worst happened, he would simply kill anyone who got in the way. He stepped on a demonic bug on the ground, crushing it. In his heart, Ragnar felt a resistance growing. Resistance to this world, to its systems, and to the imposed destinies. Alice looked at him curiously, asking what was the matter. Ragnar simply smiled and let it pass. Inside, he decided to give it his all. Meanwhile, Alice watched him in silence. For the first time in a long time, someone had smiled at him. A genuine, light expression. At that moment, something small and unnoticed began to move in the heart of the noble villain. Alicia had been staying at the Brav's house for 5 days. During that time, he did not cause problems, did not complain, did not speak ill of anyone, and calmly ate the meals that were brought to him. Outside of that, he locked himself in his room, keeping distance from everything and everyone. Meanwhile, Rania was busy with an annoying task, exterminating demonic bugs. These creatures were incredibly annoying, especially because they not only walked around, but were thrown through the air by some kind of magic, flying straight into the house as if they had a goal. Ragnar became more and more irritated as he scared them away. The Peace, always calm and observant, entered and noticed that Ragnar seemed to be struggling. Ragnar, fed up, asked if it was Peace, saw the ridiculousness of all that and even asked for help, because there were too many bugs to handle alone. At that moment, Rania thought about finding out where they came from and destroying the source completely. But Sepaz warned him that causing such a fuss would only bring trouble, that they might even lose the house if he acted recklessly. More importantly, Sepaz explained that bugs were attracted to Lady Alicia's heart. Something in her was calling them. Ragnar scoffed at the idea. The Brab family did not know how to deal with delicate issues such as emotions. They were fighters. Besides, for what? Alicia was the first girl of her age that I had really spent time with. He wondered aloud that he was supposed to be a normal youth. Sebas, with a kind tone, assured her that things would turn out well. The next morning, a knock sounded in the hallway. Rania was outside Alicia's door, calling that breakfast was ready. She recalled hearing about a thing at the academy called a tea party, a social event to make friends. So he thought, why not try something similar? Sharing a meal could be a way to connect. He kept calling cheerfully, encouraging her to join in. He even joked that everyone loves breakfast. Suddenly, the door burst open. Alicia was there, clearly awake and upset. The door almost came off its hinges. Ragnar just smiled, a little relieved. I was afraid she was falling into a darker place. They sat down to breakfast together. Alice scolded him, asking what he would have done if the door had really been broken. Ragnar replied matter-of-factly. He was good at repairing things, so it wouldn't be a problem. Alice raised an eyebrow, surprised that someone from a noble family would make their own repairs. Ragnar deflected the comment and concentrated on the food, asking her to enjoy the meal and the coffee he had prepared. Alicia looked at the coffee curiously, tried a sip and immediately coughed. It was too bitter for her. Ragnar looked worried and asked if anything was wrong. Alicia explained, a little embarrassed, that it was the first time she had had coffee. They always had tea at home. The coffee was too expensive and rare to have on hand. Ragnar apologized, saying he hadn't been able to make tea, but Alicia told him not to worry. To help, Ragnar added sugar to his cup. Alicia smelled the sweetened drink, smiled slightly, and said she could take it like this. Ragnar warned her not to drink coffee too late, because it might keep her up all night. They continued to eat in silence until Alicia broke the silence. He looked at Ragnar and asked what kind of food he was eating. Without hesitation, he told her that it was monster meat. All the kids in the Brab family grew up with that. Alice was horrified and asked if it was poisonous. Ragnar explained that if you started eating it from a young age, the body got used to it. It didn't taste very good, but it was valuable, especially in wartime. Then Alicia asked something more personal. Why did Ragnar do all that by himself? Ragnar shrugged his shoulders and replied simply, there were few people. Everyone had to help. Even the servants used to fight when it was necessary. But now most of them had died in battle. Alicia looked at him in amazement. Rania continued, in the Brav family, losing didn't mean much unless it meant death. What mattered most was surviving, holding on to life, getting back up, and refusing to give up. That was the spirit they lived by. Then, rising slowly, Ragnar reached out his hand and gently brushed aside a lock of Alice's hair. Looking at her seriously, he told her what he really thought. Lady Alicia was an extraordinary person. Ragnar spoke calmly and confidently, telling her that on this earth, they never hide their scars. Scars are not something to be ashamed of. Rather, they are worn with pride. To prove it, she gathered up her hair and showed him the scars on her skin. They were marks of survival, memories of battles fought and endured. He admitted that he had many, as anyone who lived long enough in his world. Without realizing it, he had leaned close to her, a habit formed by years of tending to wounded soldiers. He noticed and moved away a little, offering a gentle smile. He told her that he had come to ask her out. Although the territory might seem harsh and chaotic, the nature that surrounded them was wild, rich and beautiful. He asked her if she would walk with him because when you are surrounded by mountains and trees, human conflicts seem small and far away. Alicia looked at him and quietly accepted. He politely asked her to show him this unknown land. Ragnar smiled, happy that she was willing. The sun was already high when they left. The giant trees swayed gently in the wind. Majestic mountains towered in the distance. Alicia was walking next to Rania with a firm but uncertain step. He had said that he would come, and he meant it, but no one told him that they would have to go so far into the mountains. They had entered the Udana Range, a vast chain of peaks near the Brav territory. Unlike the royal capital, where everything is polished and structured, this place was untouched and wild. It contained rare plants and minerals that you would never find in the city. However, Alice had assumed that they would visit some peaceful village and see local products, not that they would climb the wilderness. Ragnar laughed at his confusion. He explained that there were no tourist sites here, and he had probably already noticed on the way. This was not a place full of shops and cozy inns, just a rough settlement surrounded by dangerous land. The only people who came here were adventurers hunting monsters. The only entertainment, gambling. People even bet on whether their father would die in battle, and someone actually won money when he survived. Alicia's face blushed, and Rania realized that she had said too much. He quickly apologized. It wasn't the kind of story I should tell a noble lady, but Alicia stopped him and said it was okay. If this is what life was like here, I wanted to understand it. Ragnar noticed that about her. As with coffee before, even when things were strange or unfamiliar, she didn't run away. He was trying to adapt. He respected it. He suggested they take a short break. They stopped by a river. Alice knelt down, put her hands together and drank. His eyes widened in surprise. It was fresh and clean water. The Udana mountain range, high in altitude, and with little human interference, offered one of the purest waters on earth. Ragnar watched her in silence, thinking that such clarity, untouched by war or politics, was something she would never find in the capital. He gently called her by name, and talked about the earth around her. She could be hard, even difficult to accept at first, but the more you understand her, the more bearable she becomes. Alice nodded, listening. Ragnar explained further. In the Brav family, they were taught that enemies and allies live on the same earth. You should never underestimate anyone. Instead, you must truly, deeply understand them in order to survive. That was what they had been raised on. In some distant world, Ragnar had heard a proverb that said something similar. Here, in this rough land, People did not wait for others to decide for them. They would make decisions based on what they knew, and then fight for those choices. Alice answered gently. I had looked into the eyes of the people who lived here. What he saw was not that cold and heartless place described in the rumors. It was a place full of quiet strength. People here didn't laugh for no reason, but when they did, it had weight. Rania said it was okay to laugh. In a place where life and death were treated as stakes, laughter might be rare, but it was still welcome. Then, shaking off the heavy atmosphere, he urged Alice to move on. They were almost at their destination. He jumped on a big rock in front of her and turned, holding out his hand to help her up. He said something that made her laugh a little, and she took his hand, calling him a strange person. But he did not say it cruelly, rather it seemed that he was beginning to understand it. Finally, they reached the top of the mountain. The view stretched out before them, wide and amazing. Firm that they could see the whole village below, small but vibrant. Alicia looked amazed. Ragnar observed her reaction, and told her that this was his favorite place. Maybe it didn't seem special to others, but for him it was everything. Ragnar started to prepare some food, mentioning that after so much walking, he must be hungry. It was just a light snack, but enough. Sitting together, Alice asked if she could ask him a question, using the title Lord Ragnar. He told her that it was not necessary, that he did not need honorifics between them. She smiled a little and said that she was also not used to being treated so formally, and that he did not have to speak to her so politely. Ragnar laughed softly, amused by Alicia's comment, although he admitted that maybe she was right. Alice then called him by name, not formally, but gently, as if approaching. He spoke calmly and weightily, revealing something deeper. He said that even after worrying endlessly and choosing a path, even when someone accepts the consequences, there are times when regret breaks out with force. He looked directly at Ragnar and asked him what he was doing at that moment. Her eyes sought his and Ragnar fell silent, remembering something. He said that maybe time could offer a solution, but he wondered if that wasn't just a lie that people tell each other to console themselves. When someone chooses something, he naturally loses something else. And when something is lost, sometimes there is nothing to do. There is no turning back. Then Alice asked, and if there is no left at all? He confessed that his whole life had been dedicated to a single purpose. If she lost him, what would be left of her? She said that, as a duchess, she was already dead. That was why he had come to this place, a forgotten and wild land, so far from everything he had ever known. Realizing how heavy her words were, she quickly apologized to Ragnar for being so improper. But Ragnar, watching her carefully, noticed something else. The demonic bugs were gathering again. Attracted by his inner emotions, he wondered if it was really impossible, after all, to cut off the feelings that people carry with them. He remembered what his loyal butler had once told him, that he was clumsy and direct, but that his honesty was fine as it was. Clenching her fist, Rania took a step forward. He called Alicia by name with determination and full sincerity. He told her that from now on, no matter what, he would protect her. Alice froze, surprised by the intensity of his words. He continued, saying that even if the Alice of the duchy had left, the Alice who was there was someone different. Someone who belonged to the Bra family, and for her he would make a promise to protect her no matter what happened. Alicia laughed softly, amused. He said Ragnar didn't seem to be used to saying things like that. Ragnar also laughed and admitted it. Actually, I had mentally practiced a heroic and great phrase for this moment. It was ridiculous. Who does that kind of thing? But Alice looked at him with a warm expression and said that she did not dislike him. He was simple, honest, easy to understand. That was enough. Looking at her, Ragnar felt the weight in her tone begin to lift. Alicia admitted that maybe, just maybe, she had been thinking too much. Then, with more seriousness, she asked him that if he returned to the academy with her, he would probably face a lot of malice and hostility. Knowing that, would he still protect her? Ragnar smiled. Of course, he said. He was good at dealing with that kind of thing. He told her to leave it in his hands. Alicia smiled back at him. That quiet moment was left suspended in the air, but then Ragnar turned his head and called back, asking if Onyx had seen everything. Alice blinked in confusion until something huge moved in the shadows. A colossal black dragon appeared behind the mountain ridge. His dark scales shone in the light, and with a deep, rumbling voice he replied that yes, he had witnessed Ragnar's promise. Alice's eyes widened in disbelief. I was completely stunned. Ragnar calmly introduced the dragon, telling him that his name was Onyx, and that he was his friend. Overwhelmed, Alicia tripped and fell to the ground. Ragnar looked at her in surprise. He had only wanted Onyx to be a witness to his promise, but now Alicia was lying on the floor. He ran to her side calling her by name. Onyx, with a low, disapproving growl, remarked that fainting over such a thing was weak. And so, their first outing together, their first real date, came to an end. He had his share of emotional revelations, wild confessions, sudden dragons, and a swoon. But it ended with a flourish and the promise of something new to come. The next morning, at the Brav's house, Alicia approached Ragnar with questions still heavy in her mind. He asked her what had happened the day before. Ragnar replied matter-of-factly, saying that he thought it would be romantic to make a promise in front of a dragon. Alice looked at him, clearly dissatisfied with that answer. He insisted on knowing that it was exactly that dragon. Ragnar replied without hesitation. He explained that Onyx was a dragon that lived deep in the Udana mountain range. To him, it seemed completely normal. In fact, he was pleased. The dragon's blessing had chased away the demonic bugs that were harassing Alice. Alicia was stunned. How could Ragnar be so calm in the face of something so absurd? Ragnar remembered something that his piece had told him earlier that day, as he once challenged Onyx to a one-on-one duel. That ended in a draw. This was how the dragon did not recognize, but Ragnar admitted to himself that he almost died in the process. Still, the important thing was that it led to peace between them. For Ragnar, the risk had been worth it. Alice sighed, and said that in comparison, she must have looked completely silly for panicking. But the maid gently intervened, assuring her that everyone felt the same when they first arrived in the territory. A nearby worker added that over time, nothing here would seem surprising. As Alice looked around the house, she noticed something. Everyone was busy. The papers piled up, and the staff worked steadily to manage everything. Without hesitation, Alicia reached out her hand and offered to help. Ragnar was confused at first. He knew how complicated paperwork was, even with his knowledge of modern administrative systems. Still, he did not refuse. If she really didn't care, she would accept his help. Alicia then called pause and asked for the old documents. Sebas complied without question. Alicia immersed herself in the work. It wasn't long before I noticed something weird. One store in particular had a strange flow of money. His keen eye scanned the ledgers, analyzing every detail. She continued to work, concentrated and in silence, until finally, she announced that most of the problems should be solved. Sebas watched her, impressed. She commented that it was not surprising that she had a reputation for being a highly talented woman. Meanwhile, Ragnar couldn't help but think about how modern society seemed to lack even such a basic education. Seeing Alicia like this, focused, capable and calm, he realized something. When the demonic bugs weren't clinging to her heart, Alicia could smile like any normal girl. Later that day, Alicia watched the staff continue with their daily tasks. A maid was cleaning the windows. A man was tending the garden. Inspired, Alicia turned to Rania and told her that she wanted to help clean up the mansion as well. The announcement surprised everyone. The maid protested at once. She could not allow Lady Alicia to do such things, but Alicia insisted. She was no longer a duchess. He was simply a person living under the roof of the Brav family. I wanted to experience everything I had never done before. The staff tried to stop her, but Alicia had already made her decision. From a distance, Ragnar and Sebas watched the scene side by side. Ragnar smiled and commented on what a nice person Alicia was. Sebas, always serene, nodded and said that they should also give their best. Then, with a mischievous smile, Sebas told Ragnar that he had left him part of the day's work. Ragnar sighed and muttered how unforgiving his butler could be. Just then, something caught Rania's attention. The prices at a gun store seemed unusually high. He checked the records and noticed that the increase happened just the day Alicia arrived. Upon further investigation, he realized that the store was new, run by people from the royal capital. They intended to sell rare and precious objects, acting as noble merchants. But in a land where guns are used as tools, and wear out fast, That kind of luxury business wouldn't last. Ragnar understood his real motive. They were probably spies sent to keep an eye on Alice. Sebas asked what Ragnar was planning to do. He, cold and determined, said he would pull that thread, cut the root. As night fell over the Brav territory, Rania was alone, watching the dim lights of houses and shops in the distance. The conversation with Sebas echoed in his mind. Sebas had warned him to be careful. The people connected to that store were not common. They were trained, they were skilled. When Rania asked how he knew, the answer was simple. An injured adventurer had given a warning to Sebas. The man, annoyed by the arrogance with which a new group of merchants did business, tried to steal something from them out of spite. But before he could blink, his right arm was cut off, clean and fast, without him seeing the blade move. It wasn't just skill, it was magic. I was sure. They weren't just thugs. In front of rough adventurers who lived and fought in this harsh land, someone who can cut without drawing a weapon means only one thing. There is a magician involved. In this world, the magical essence fills the air like oxygen. Those who control it at will are called sorcerers. And during the wars, they were feared above all. The biggest losses on any battlefield used to be from facing enemy mages. Hearing the report, Ragnar's face darkened. Now I understood that they were not there just for business. They were to eliminate Alicia. She was the target. Without hesitation, Ragnar rushed towards the source of the threat. He came in kicking the suspicious store door. His entrance was loud and aggressive. A group of armed men inside looked up surprised. One of them recognized him instantly, Ragnar Brav, the third son of the Brav family. They demanded to know what he was doing there. Did Ragnar give them back? Why were they hanging around and snooping around the Brav family's property? He told them clearly that if they gave him a proper explanation, he might not treat them harshly. The men looked at each other and burst into laughter. Drawing their swords, they approached confidently. They mocked Ragnar, saying that he was just a naive noble boy who had come alone. They weren't afraid of it, but Ragnar acted before the insults were over. He brutally beat one, throwing him against the furniture. He then kicked another, smashing him against the wall. The room shook. His strength left them stunned. A slow clap echoed from the background. A hooded man stepped forward, watching Ragnar with amusement. He commented that Ragnar was only 15 years old, but such power was impressive. Ragnar understood instantly that this was the magician. The man smiled maliciously and asked something that chilled Ragnar's blood. How was Miss Alicia? Ragnar narrowed his eyes and asked for clarification. The magician laughed cruelly. He spoke of Alice as a fallen genius, someone brought down under the weight of her spell. He admitted that he sent his damned demonic bugs day after day, trying to drown her in despair and hatred. That was his way of crushing her spirit. But before he had finished speaking, Ragnar advanced in a blink and plunged his sword into the magician's chest. His voice was full of rage. He told her that for every day she tormented Alicia, he would make her pay. Alicia wasn't broken. She smiled, thrived, was loved by everyone on the property, and did her job with pride. That was the reality. The magician growled and summoned a huge monster. A praying mantis fused with magical energy lunged at Rania, but he stood his ground. The magician shouted that he could not believe it. He had poured all his hatred into that curse every day. How could she have overcome it? Before he could escape, Ragnar attacked the wizard and the mantis at the same time, sending them flying. The magician cast a spell in response, trying to cut off Ragnar's arms, but it didn't work. Ragnar remained standing. Without a scratch. The magician was confused. Why couldn't I hurt him? Ragnar calmly said that everything the man did was useless. Then he listed the debts one by one. First, by the adventurer whose arm was cut off, he attacked the summoned mantis and destroyed it. Secondly, because of the hordes of cursed plagues sent to Alice, she stomped on the magician's leg. Ragnar bowed and said he would spare his life if he revealed who was behind all this. The magician replied weakly, "Set fire to the Duke's family." That was all Ragnar needed to hear. He thanked the man. Then, with a final blow, he unloaded a punishment for all the pain suffered by Alicia. The magician fell to the ground, barely consenting, muttering threats and curses. But Ragnar just smiled and told him that he was already cursed. At that moment, Sebas entered the building with a calm and unflappable presence. He asked if everything was over. Ragnar nodded and asked Cease to take care of the cleaning. Cease bowed and accepted. Just as Cease turned to leave, Rania had a question. I wanted to know if, when they went to the academy, there was any way to keep Alicia close enough to always protect her. Sebas raised an eyebrow and asked if he meant under the same roof. Then she joked that being pregnant as a student would be a bit much. Ragnar rejected it in horror, saying that it was not that at all. I just didn't want anything to happen to Alicia before I could act. That was all. I just wanted to be close enough to protect her. He looked at Seba seriously. I was counting on him. Sebas nodded with a small smile, understanding. Later that night, Rania was walking alone under the silent sky. He realized something. It was the first time he had tried so hard for someone since he avenged his father. At some point, his heart had gone numb. He had stopped feeling. He wondered when it had happened, and if he would ever fit in at the academy. At the same time, Alicia was inside, reading in silence. He wondered if he was doing enough, if he had told him everything Ragnar needed to know about the academy. With unexpressed feelings in their hearts, they were both looking towards an uncertain future. And so, as the night deepened, something between them grew, wordless, but real. A few months passed, and Alice announced that they would leave for the royal capital the next day. The timing was unfortunate. I wouldn't be able to harvest the dyed radishes in time. Despite her status as a noble villain, Alice tended the garden alone, completely focused on the task. The resources previously reserved for her higher education had been reallocated to daily household chores, ironically shaping Alicia into an exceptionally capable woman. Later that day, one of the maids tearfully begged Alice not to leave, saying that the academy was more suitable for the young master. Another maid insisted that Alice would be better off staying at the mansion. Sebas, watching, noticed the difference in how they treated both. One of the maids then handed Alice a small object from her pocket, a children's necklace that the young master used to wear. He explained that if Sabe ever crossed the line, Alicia should use it to discipline him. As the carriage began to move forward, a butler joked that if anything happened to Lady Alicia, Ragnar would have to clean the floors as punishment. Ragnar acknowledged this with reluctance. Someone else called the young teacher, reminding him not to catch a cold and to eat his vegetables. Alice laughed at the affection and told Ragnar that he was really loved by everyone. And he admitted to feeling a little envious. For Ragnar, it was the first time he had left his native territory, and he silently remembered all the people he left behind. Finally, his carriage reached the mountains. The porter pointed ahead. Now they could see the real capital. Alice remained silent, without moving. Ragnar noticed that his hands were shaking. She didn't say anything. To ease the tension, Ragnar, uncomfortable, asked him a favor. When they arrived at the station, to show him how to buy a train ticket and how to travel by train. Alice replied with a small laugh, provoking Rania's protest, but she assured him to leave it in her hands. It was his first trip, after all. He warned that the capital would be full of people. Jokingly, he asked if they should put a necklace on Rania so she wouldn't get lost. He refused, internally wondering what kind of performance they were putting on. They entered through the doors, and Alicia began to show him the city. Ragnar stared in amazement. They had reached the royal capital, Ether, home to more than 1 million people. The city was protected by a huge barrier that was said to have been built by an ancient sage. In Rania's mind, the city seemed ideal. Few monsters, no wars. It was no wonder that so many people gathered there. Alicia commented that she felt a little cramped compared to her homeland in the Brab territory. The two strolled around the city, sampling food and exploring the streets. Rania asked if the dormitory where they would be staying was inside the school campus. Alicia confirmed that yes, and that the boys' and girls' dormitories were separated. Rania admitted that she had liked that. They finally arrived at the place. Alicia presented the building where they would live. Rania was stunned. It seemed dilapidated and far removed from the main school. He asked what kind of place that was. Alicia handed him a letter from Sebas. He read it aloud. He explained that living in a rundown dormitory and being exposed to public ridicule was part of the plan to convince the opposing noble families to stop resisting Ragnar's reinstatement. Alicia understood the intention, and it seemed that Sebas had already spread the word through the appropriate channels. Ragnar thought that if there was no one else around, the bedroom might be convenient. Still, I would definitely need Lisa. Alicia, thinking about the future, mentioned that maybe she would start growing vegetables in the yard. While he was standing by the window, a letter caught his attention. It was written in the Brad script. The contents crudely stated that the condoms had been stored in the young master's room. Ragnar, reading that, crushed the letter in his hand. Alicia looked at him out of the corner of her eye, noticing his reaction, and he shook his head quickly as if to downplay it. The letter continued, all Cinder could do was arrange for Alicia and Rania to live together. The young master would have to pass the entrance exam to get into the same upper class as Lady Alicia. They wished him luck, closing the letter with hope. But Ragnar was restless. Even if I managed to pass, the place they aspired to, the academy at AM, was very different from everything I knew. He attracted almost all the noble sons of the kingdom. The classes were segregated by rank. Those who had the potential for real marriage entered the upper class, those who did not, in the lower. However, even commoners could be accepted into the upper class if their magic or knowledge was worthy of a descendant of sages. For Rania, it seemed like a big stage, far above her modest upbringing. He imagined the school life that awaited him. Previously only a rural noble from a distant land, and a so-called villainess, they had now entered into a story much bigger than their own. But Ragnar had already decided. If it was about skill, it would show that they were worthy. The next day started with a voice screaming that he was late. A professor was waiting, unimpressed, for a nobleman from a remote territory to make an upper-class faculty member wait. It was unacceptable. Rania simply smiled and apologized, saying that she had got lost, which was not a lie. It was his first time at the academy. Dressed in sports clothes, Ragnar stood in front of the examiner. The professor muttered that Ragnar was incredibly slow. As Ragnar suspected, the treatment he would receive would be like this, contemptuous and disdainful. The teacher said they would start with a basic magic test. Ragnar had to cast a spell with maximum power towards the target. When he asked if there were any specific conditions or type of magic required, the professor impatiently said no and urged him to start. Rania took her stand. The professor watched with disinterest, muttering how annoying it was to be assigned as an examiner for such a noble. Then, in an instant, Rania released her spell. An explosion rumbled. The wall shattered, and the explosion went through even the walls behind. The target was destroyed. The debris was left on the ground. The professor was stunned. Who was that boy? What had just happened? Rania calmly asked if it had happened. The professor, shaken, said that there was still more evidence left. Although Rania clearly had magical ability, the professor thought that she would not pass the next test. He handed her a wooden sword. The next test was fencing. The rules were simple: defeat the teacher and pass. Magic was strictly forbidden. Ragnar agreed, and said to make it quick. His confidence irritated the professor, who grumbled that Ragnar was a barbarian. The professor lunged, but before the fight could develop, Ragnar made a quick move with his wooden sword. The teacher was disarmed and fell to the ground. Ragnar picked up the professor's sword and examined it. Inside the supposed wooden sword there was hidden iron. In contrast, Ragnar's sword was made of normal wood. Clearly, the professor had been trying to sabotage him from the beginning, wanting to make sure he failed. By giving him an inferior weapon, the uproar attracted attention. A voice asked what was wrong. Ragnar turned to the door and stood transfixed. There was a man addressing him directly. He was the director of the academy, the principal Borza Gran Koska. This unexpected encounter in either, for better or for worse, marked a new turn in the road. Balsa entered the room, pointing out that it was the transfer exam that day. There stood, tall and dignified, no less than Borja Gran Koskar, director of the academy, widely known as the Sage, and nobleman of one of the ducal houses. For someone like Rania, a minor noble from the abandoned lands, attracting the attention of someone like Borja would be nothing but danger. Borja calmly entered and assessed the scene. The destroyed examination area was left all around him. The stunned professor fell to the ground, remaining silent for a moment, apparently lost in thought. Then, without hesitation, he declared that Ragnar had passed the exam. Ragnar was surprised. Although he took it with amazement, he thanked, not being at all sure that it was really so. Boria explained that the difference between the upper and lower ranks in the academy was nothing more than a slight variation in bloodlines. Then he posed a question: did Ragnar want to join the upper class? It wasn't that he was desperate to be in the upper class, that wasn't what moved him. But he knew that there was someone there whom he had to protect, and that was reason enough. Boria accepted his answer and approved his admission into the upper class. The teacher on the floor, still annoyed, objected. Rania came from a backward land. Even worse, his fiancée had recently been involved in an incident. What were they hoping to achieve? Boria turned to him coldly, calling him an idiot. He reminded him that if he really was a teacher, he should act like one, and prevent problems before they started. The professor had no reply. He shyly apologized. Rania was speechless. Boria addressed him directly. As a special exception, Rania could use the assigned dormitory. But she was reminded to maintain proper and decent behavior as a student. Ragnar felt in token of recognition. Later, when he returned to the bedroom, he reflected on everything. He had not helped the protagonist to level up. When he arrived at the door, he knocked announcing his return. Alicia rushed out to meet him. Visibly worried, she asked if something strange had happened, or if someone had said something to her. Ragnar reassured her and noticed the school uniform she was wearing. Maybe he was just trying it out. It suited her, but she didn't say it out loud. Internally, she found it adorable, though she felt it didn't matter so much to say so. Then he told her the result: she passed the exam. It was not something he really wanted to do, but after so much effort and challenges, he made sure to succeed. Alice, curious, asked about something she had been wanting to know for a long time, that so-called magical illness of his. What exactly was it? Ragnar vaguely explained that he could use all the basic magic, but it was difficult to detail. More than anything, what he excelled at was. Before he finished, Alicia's stomach roared. A moment of silence followed, then a visible embarrassment. Without saying more, he quickly declared that he would prepare dinner. Tomorrow would be a busy day at the academy. They needed something nutritious. He hurried away. Ragnar gratefully followed her and thanked her. He told her that if he found any problems at the academy, he should tell her. Alcha warned him that violence was not allowed, and that she didn't care what others said, because he would be there. Ragnar blushed. Inside he thought that maybe Alicia was stronger than him. She asked what he meant. He did not respond, but in his thoughts he knew that she was capable of enduring emotional pain. Something that even hardened soldiers often did not achieve. As for him, he only had strength because he knew his limits. The next day, at the academy, whispers followed him as they walked. Someone pointed to a scar, asking if it was from the duel. Another confirmed it. Then came murmurs about the man walking next to Alicia. Who was he? Although many admitted that she was beautiful, the rumors continued. There was no way he could get married now. Rania tried to stay calm, reminding herself to be serene and peaceful, but a comment cut through the chat. Someone muttered that, since Alice's status had fallen, perhaps he could make her his concubine. Before the words could settle, the man fell. His friends looked alarmed. Alicia, now next to Rania, whispered to her to stop. He pretended innocence. Internally, he wondered if he had let slip a little murderous intent. Would those in the capital really be that weak? Later, in the classroom, Ragnar continued to reflect. The protagonist in the final stage of the story was destined to wake up as a saint. She was a beautiful girl, serene, like a clear blue sky. He tried to remember her name. Then a certain voice called in class. A question addressed to Mariana Ocean. She responded by explaining that the magic most used by the sage was one with no elemental attribute. To master it, one had to reach a state of complete nothingness. Ragnar looked at her, a girl with glasses. That was her, the heroine. The teacher confirmed that the answer was correct, despite being a trick question, an expected result of the sage's disciple. Mariana adjusted her glasses, but they suddenly fell off and broke on the floor. Rania began to wonder if she was really the protagonist of a game or tome. Mariana muttered about her broken glasses. The companions began to whisper, one pointing out that it was the 4th time that month that she had broken her glasses and calling her pitiful. Another said someone should switch seats with her. A third added that Mariana had turned down those offers because of education. In Rania's thoughts, Her appearance did not match the idea of her starting a romantic affair with the prince. Mariana murmured that if she had known this would happen, she would have asked for a seat later. A colleague offered to change seats with her, but Mariana insisted that she would manage on her own. He thanked the offer and the partner accepted his decision. The teacher then addressed Mariana by her full name, saying that at the next seating arrangement, she would be directly in front of the podium. Mariana nervously accepted, bowing repeatedly and apologizing. Ragnar found himself reflecting on Alice, wondering who she was really fighting. But during the break, sitting in the bedroom, he admitted that he could not ask her that. He thought that men who inquire into the past are the worst. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed on the ceiling. Debris fell from above. Ragnar quickly moved his hand and formed a barrier that protected Alice from the fragments. Looking at the new hole, he noticed that the damage was severe and that he would have to repair it later. Alice asked about the strange transparent form that had protected her. Ragnar replied that it was a hidden barrier, magic of sacred attribute, similar to the guardian barrier surrounding the royal capital. Alice, confused, asked if she could really use magic without singing. Rania claimed that it was very convenient. Most saw the barriers as solid walls, but with pitches without a ridge. Suddenly, Rania poured the contents of a teapot into the air, surprising Alicia. The liquid was trapped by an invisible container. Rania explained that the barrier could take any shape, even this transparent cup. Alicia was amazed, watching the coffee float in front of her. Ragnar looked at her fondly, thinking how adorable she looked. He added that there were other differences between the common barriers and those in the royal capital. Alicia reflected and commented that maybe it was because Ragnar could control what happened and what didn't. Rania confirmed his deduction. The advanced barriers could be selectively permeable. Alicia compared that to being able to do anything. Rania pointed out that there were still limits. For example, he could not separate things already mixed, such as sugar dissolved in coffee. That reminded him that the coffee that Alicia preferred had run out. Alicia confirmed that she had run out of the grains she had brought. Blushing, she asked Ragnar if he was free later, and if he wanted to go out. I knew of a place with excellent coffee. Later, as they were walking together, Alicia mentioned that the place must be nearby. Rania asked where he had gotten that information. Alicia explained that while she was studying in the library during a lunch break, someone approached her. That girl also liked coffee, and they had become friends. It was that girl who recommended the place. Soon they arrived and Alicia pointed to the store, announcing that it was that one. Ragnar read the sign over the door, Ocean Coffee Specialty Store. A strange feeling came over him. Could it be? He and Alicia rang the doorbell. Unexpectedly, the door opened and Mariana appeared, clearly surprised to see Alicia there. Ragnar was equally stunned by the encounter. Mariana commented that Alicia had been standing in front of the store looking, which had caused her curiosity. As she moved her gaze, she noticed Ragnar and blurted out a nonchalant comment about him being the real coffee lover. Alicia confirmed his name, introducing him as Ragnar. He greeted her politely. Mariana leaned over, studying him carefully, and said that he looked like a classmate of hers. Alicia asked about it and Ragnar admitted that they had never really talked, although they were in the same class. Suddenly, Mariana began to worry nervously. She apologized, apparently overwhelmed by the thought that a nobleman had come to her shop. Then he asked why Alicia was with someone like Ragnar. Alice looked confused, reminding her that she too was of noble status, and that Ragnar was her fiancé. Immediately, Mariana panicked and fell to the ground in apology. He begged for forgiveness for not having recognized his noble rank, expressing deep shame and regret. Alicia was shocked by the dramatic scene, especially when Mariana asked if she deserved execution for her mistake. Ragnar sighed inside, disappointed at how things had turned out. That girl, that was supposed to be the main protagonist. Later, inside the store, Mariana kept apologizing for her previous reaction, touching her forehead, as if to pull herself together. Alicia responded guiltily, saying that she was the one who should apologize, but Mariana rejected him. He explained that he had approached Alicia out of excitement. I was hoping, maybe, to finally be a friend. Mariana had seen Alicia drinking coffee in the library, and assumed she was a commoner like her. Ragnar pondered. In this world, coffee is considered a drink of ordinary people. Still, He really liked her. Mariana mentioned that she had heard that 2 female disciples of the sage would be attending that year, and assumed that Ragnar was one of them. Ragnar was confused. Was there another disciple? Alicia asked if Mariana had missed all the drama she caused at school. Mariana admitted that she did and wondered if that was why Alicia seemed so isolated. She was surprised that such an incident happened without her knowing about it. Rania questioned how she could miss something so important. Mariana confessed that that day she accidentally took the wrong carriage and ended up somewhere else. Ragnar couldn't help but wonder if it was just bad luck or something more deliberate. Of all the days to get lost, it had to be just such a crucial one. Alicia changed the subject a little, pointing out that people said that Mariana was a genius in magic, but at the same time, she seemed a little scattered. Mariana recognized him, explaining that although she was really good at magic, her parents used to say that she was useless at everything else. Curious, Rania asked about her parents. Mariana's expression softened. He explained that they had died a year ago due to an illness. Alice immediately scolded Rania for being insensitive. He sincerely apologized. Mariana told them that she was fine, that she owed her current life to her parents. Afterwards, he stood up and offered to serve them coffee, remembering that although he had invited them, he had not prepared anything yet. Not long after, Mariana brought out the coffee, along with a dessert. Alicia tried a sip, and was surprised by how good it tasted, completely different from the one usually prepared by Rania. He laughed uncomfortably, finding it strange. They used the same grains, why was yours so much better? He remembered something Sebas had told him, that his coffee was bitter, perhaps symbolic of his own life. He turned to Mariana and declared that he would now consider her his mentor. Mariana protested embarrassed and Alicia reassured her that she was just joking. Blushing, Mariana commented on how strange it was that the 2 nobles were not scary at all. Rania asked why she was so afraid of the nobles. Mariana explained that it was a faint but painful memory. As a child, a boy from the neighborhood warned her that defying a nobleman, even a little, could cost her her life. About that time, a noble carriage ran over her. The people in the carriage showed no concern for her condition and left her behind. The accident had impaired his eyesight. Her parents, hearing that coffee was good for vision, started drinking it with her. Over time, coffee became a family habit, something that united them all. Mariana looked at her cup and laughed, appreciating the depth of the flavor. Alicia asked if it was true that Mariana was skilled in magic. Mariana nodded. Among his magical abilities, the one he mastered the most was recovery magic, the power to heal others. Alice looked at Ragnar admiringly. What Mariana possessed, recovery magic, was extremely rare. Ragnar confirmed this, pointing out that in that world, very few people could heal others by magic. But Ragnar knew from the game that Santa Mariana had much greater potential. He could cure any disease, cast out demons, and even regenerate lost limbs. Mariana revealed that a year ago she was unable to save her parents when they became ill. That helplessness led her to study tirelessly so that, if someone dear was in danger again, she could protect him. Alicia, touched by his sincerity, stood up and gently hugged Mariana. Moments later, Alicia noticed that the store was still empty. No other customers had come in. Ragnar admitted that it was because he had locked the door on entering. Alice, with wide eyes, grabbed his necklace and demanded that he open it immediately, accusing him of hindering the business. But Mariana reassured them both, saying that lately she closed the cafe on holidays to concentrate more on her studies. Later, as they were preparing to separate, Mariana thanked the visit. Alicia asked if Mariana wouldn't stay in the bedroom. Given her status as a disciple of the sage, she was probably exempt from many requirements. But Mariana denied with a gentle smile. He said he liked his home. Her living expenses and tuition fees were covered as long as she maintained excellent grades. And part of her dormitory allowance was redirected to support her current lifestyle. Before leaving, Mariana told Alicia that if she ever had problems at the academy, she should come to her. Alicia replied that only with those words was enough and thanked him sincerely. Then Mariana exclaimed how dazzling Alicia was and joked asking Ragnar if he would let her stay with Alicia. Ragnar flatly denied. Alice, confused by the conversation, asked what they were talking about. On the way to her bedroom, Alicia reflected out loud that Mariana was really a good person. When he saw her for the first time, he noticed something familiar, Mariana had the same eyes as Ragnar, eyes that looked directly at her. Clear, beautiful. Ragnar agreed. People with great inner strength usually have such a look. Alicia asked if he had met anyone like that before. Ragnar replied yes, and suddenly turned to her, smiling softly. He described those eyes with a strong will, eyes that face fate, beautiful, adorable. Alice blushed, embarrassed, and asked him what he meant by that. Did he want to be a prince? Rania, still smiling, admitted that she really wasn't the princely type at all. A villain and a plebeian protagonist, two girls destined to clash, were now inexplicably sharing a quiet lunch. The tension that defined their roles seemed to dissolve, replaced by a silent companionship. Mariana was impressed by the attractive appearance of Alicia's sandwich. Meanwhile, Rania was on the rooftop, watching the scene unfold. She thought that this harmony between friends was beautiful, although she did not understand how they had reached that point. Alice was looking around, wondering where Ragnar had gone. By the time the break started, he had disappeared. But I knew he was taking his studies seriously. Rania, for his part, was lost in thought. With Alicia now by his side, someone who in the original story had been discarded at the border, I suspected that the criticism would grow. He didn't mind being a supporting character, but that strange twist of fate made him uneasy. In the story of the game, Alicia and Mariana were enemies. Alice had lost a duel, and had been exiled to the border. However, here, Mariana was not Ragnar's enemy, or the one who had brought Alicia down. So, who had defeated Alicia in this version? A memory came to his mind. It was the prince who caused the duel. Ragnar's curiosity was aroused. Determined to investigate, he looked down from the rooftop, and saw them, the girls talking to a guy. That boy was Edward the Great, the prince himself. They asked him to accompany them, but he kindly refused, saying that he had a previous promise. Edward had once been engaged. His route in the game was the most traditional, suggested for beginners because it was manageable. A tutorial-level rival. If the story were to follow its original path, at that moment he and Alicia should be getting closer. Instead, Edward turned to someone else and apologized for making her wait. The girl greeted him warmly and formally called him Her Highness. Ragnar, watching from a distance, was impressed. I've never seen her before. The girl's name was Patricia. Edward asked her to call him simply by his first name, not by his title. Patricia shyly refused at first, nervous about the familiarity, but Edward reminded her of their first meeting in the castle town before the academy, when she unknowingly used his name. He called fate that they would meet again, and gently took her hand. Patricia blushed, clearly affected by his gesture. Rania was getting more and more confused. There was no character named Patricia in the original game. Was he replacing the role of Mariana? Who exactly was that girl? Before I could think any more, a voice called out to Edward. 4 young men approached. One cheerfully reminded him not to forget them. Another, wearing glasses, playfully claimed he wouldn't let Edward get the better of him. A third expressed disbelief at how Patricia had gotten all his attention, calling her an evil girl with a smile. Ragnar's eyes widened at the realization. These 4 were all possible love interests in the game. That meant only one thing: Patricia was at the center of a reverse harem. One suggested they all have lunch together. Another approached Patricia, while Edward sighed, and asked the group to restrain themselves a little. Patricia, caught in the middle, seemed overwhelmed. He reassured the boys, and revealed that he had prepared extra portions as usual, inviting them to eat. From a distance, Ragnar muttered to himself that this was a typical reverse Arn development. Patricia was clearly taking on the lead role. That all that montage was unfolding also meant that I had already triggered all the critical signals for every male romantic interest. Something almost unheard of in a first game. And they weren't just any kids, they were the heirs of prestigious houses. Everyone should already have a fiancé. If only it was Edward, it might still make sense. But for her to be at the center of everyone, maintaining such a network of relationships, was going to cause chaos. It wouldn't be a surprise, Ragnar thought grimly, if after graduating, someone ended up dead, under mysterious circumstances. Even so, Ragnar had no plans to get involved in the reverse harem group. He was planning to stay away. But his attention was focused on an individual who required special vigilance, Galachi's grand ignite. As I had, that man was present. Gigetsu pointed out to the others that it was better to eat there with everyone than in the cafeteria. Galachi was the second son of the powerful Ignite family. Ragnar listened intently, while Galachi called Patricia Mystery Girl, and asked if she had heard about the magician causing trouble in the nearby territory. Rania refrained from intervening. Acting rashly was not an option. I remembered all too well how dangerous Gis was. Gis had been born to a concubine as insurance in case something happened to the Ignite family's firstborn. That upbringing left deep complications, and his path in the original game was fraught with darkness and emotional weight. A single decision of the player could completely change his path. That volatility made him a dangerous figure. The Ignite family had attacked Rania before, which should have meant that they would eventually cross paths. However, so far they had not met even once. Rania decided to let it go for now. The only thing I really wanted was for Alice to have a peaceful life and avoid possible future ruin. That was all. But his thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a voice pointing out that choosing and deciding like this was something he did not respect. He was the principal of the school. Ragnar paused for a moment and replied that it was dangerous to be on the rooftop. The director said that Ragnar was the last person who should say something like that. Ragnar wondered what had brought Boria there. Taking advantage of the moment, he told the director that he had something he wanted to ask. In Rania's mind, the pieces were starting to fall into place. The unnatural darkness at the roots of Patricia's blonde hair. The impossible reverse Arn situation she had created. There was no longer any doubt. Patricia was a reincarnated, just like him. She turned to the principal and asked him to tell her everything he knew about the student named Patricia. I wanted to know his full name, origins, the type of magic he excelled in and any other relevant data. The director responded by mentioning her full name, Patricia Kindred, and questioned what had made Rania suspicious. From his perspective, there was nothing out of place. Patricia had passed the entrance exam like everyone else and had been granted admission accordingly. He emphasized that there was no intervention or secret manipulation on his part. However, Ragnar couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She recalled the incident during the entrance event when the protagonist was clearly separated and deliberately isolated. If this was part of Patricia's plan, she would have needed help, probably from a powerful noble house. The most likely suspects in his mind were the Ignite family. The director acknowledged Rania's caution, but suggested that given the uncertainty of Patricia's true goals, it was better to keep her registered and under surveillance than to leave her unchecked. Ragnar agreed, albeit reluctantly. A peaceful resolution would be ideal. The principal reminded Ragnar that he was a student and had the right to experience a normal school life. He asked her why she confined herself to such a restrictive lifestyle. Ragnar replied simply that he was a noble from the abandoned borderlands, and that staying behind the scenes was the best option for someone like him. Privately, Ragnar reminded himself that he only had to endure that for 3 years. That would be enough. But then the director challenged him. He had forgotten the pride of the Brad family. The blood that ran in his veins was revealed, even in the most oppressive conditions. They resisted until the end. The director admitted that before he thought that such pride was just stubbornness clinging to life. But now he wondered if Ragnar's determination was really so weak. In response, Ragnar stepped forward and threw a punch at the director. A bright light burst out. The ground rumbled under the academy. The students outside screamed in confusion as the air shook and the wall behind the principal cracked. Ragnar's fist was still up, but he hadn't actually delivered the blow. He told the director that this was the situation he was looking for, and that he was only responding accordingly. If anything happened to Alicia, any harm, I would never forgive her. He didn't care if the academy was the principal's private courtyard. He accepted without protest. If that was Ragnar's will, he would have to prove it. He asked Ragnar if he believed in fate. Ragnar replied confused, asking if he was referring to that absurd scenario they were in. The director explained that Mariana Ocean was a girl with an unusually strong destiny. But that destiny had been severely distorted, and was now crumbling into chaos. Eventually, that would involve everyone in the academy, who also had strong destinies. The nation itself could be divided between light and darkness. However, in her current state, Mariana lacked the power to resist those forces. The director asked Rania to protect her. Mariana, who had lost her guardian, should not remain tied to that small closed world. His destiny pointed to a place far beyond. Meanwhile, Mariana was expressing nervousness. Rania considered the words of the director. He wondered how much Boria really knew. Then he turned to Mariana and asked if it was his first time entering a dungeon. She confirmed that yes. Ragnar silently reflected. The practical training dungeon was where students applied the magic learned in class. There were safety measures in place, but complacency could cause real injuries. They couldn't let their guard down. Nearby, Patricia was clinging to the owner, visibly frightened. Edward was holding her in his arms, assuring her that she was safe. She thanked him, calling herself weak. The other men in the group also declared that they would protect her. In Ranya's thoughts, he recognized the situation instantly. That event in the dungeon was clearly designed to strengthen ties with the conquest objectives. It was a stage for building relationships. But hidden there was a key plot point, the holy relic. Rania wondered what the fake protagonist, Patricia, would think to do about it. Just then, Alicia arrived, apologizing for the wait and cheerfully suggesting that they start. Mariana greeted her enthusiastically, waved her hand happily. Ragnar observed that Alice now had the presence of an experienced adventurer. Mariana asked why she seemed so excited. Alicia replied that it had been a while since she had entered a dungeon, and she was really looking forward to it. Suddenly, a harsh voice sounded, mocking Mariana. She was a girl who called her a persistent commoner, someone desperate to cling to the academy by association. Her subordinate repeated the insult, supporting Lady Katarina. Ragnar recognized her immediately. That girl and Ina used to be an old ally of Alicia's. Her hairstyle, curled in exaggerated bobs, earned her the nickname Drill Head in Ranya's mind. Ekaterina directed her scorn at the entire group, mocking that neighborhood rats and peasants pretended to belong to a fine school for refined nobles. He came up arrogantly, announcing that this was no place for garbage like Mariana. He offered to clean up the academy on her behalf. Alicia became calm in front of her. Ekaterina looked at her angrily, accusing her of arrogance. He blamed her for allowing commoners to run free at the academy, calling her a damaged failure. Alicia admitted that if Katharina hated her, that was fine. I had done enough to deserve it. But he insisted that Mariana was not related. If Katharina wanted a confrontation, a duel or whatever, she could make a formal request. In addition, Alicia added that if Katarina planned to challenge a disciple of the sage or herself, she should be prepared to lose. Furious, Katarina mocked Alicia for building what she called a mountain of monkeys. He told her to spend the rest of her life drinking coffee where she belonged. Alicia replied smiling that she would do it because she liked coffee. Unable to win the exchange, that Katharina left with her entourage, muttering how unbearable the smell of coffee beans was. Once outside, Alicia breathed a sigh of relief. Ragnar looked at her in wonder. Alicia was strong. Alicia apologized for dragging them to that meeting with someone so strange. Ragnar, in his heart, became more and more fond of her. Then he turned to Mariana smiling, and mentioned Ekaterina's insult, calling Alicia damaged. He joked around asking if he should kill them. Mariana smiled, and pointed out that they even insulted the coffee. Alicia scolded them, quickly telling them to stop. Inside the cave, Mariana looked around in wonder. It was his first time in a dungeon. He commented that the traps and monsters seemed to appear one after the other. Alicia asked why her group had ended up on the front line. Ragnar admitted that it was probably his fault. He asked if they were okay. Before anyone could respond, a sudden incident occurred. Alicia cried out in alarm. Ragnar stood still, having drawn an arrow that had almost reached him. He explained that he kept a protective barrier a few millimeters from his skin. Alice marveled, calling it an extraordinary technique. Rania explained that if he ran out of magic power, the barrier would fail, and the arrow would go through him. That magic had arisen long ago, when he was close to death. The idea was simple. If one could cover the whole body with a barrier, one would not feel fear. I had practiced it continuously since then, and now it was a natural thing. Mariana asked if the Brav territory was really such a scary place. Alicia replied that she was actually quite nice. He added that he planned to return there with Ragnar in the summer holidays, and invited Mariana to accompany them. Mariana enthusiastically accepted. Ragnar said it seemed like the perfect opportunity to train. He proposed mountain training, something he called Brav-style boot camp. He promised that in the end everyone could use magic without singing. Mariana was delighted. She said Ragnar would train her personally. Alicia encouraged her but warned Mariana not to kill her in the process. Ragnar assured that he would take care of everything. A small dark dragon appeared briefly in Ragnar's hand and then disappeared. Mariana looked curious and noticed how strange it was. The monsters in the dungeon would disappear in mist when defeated, leaving no corpses. He wondered aloud why that was happening. It seemed that the dungeon had been created by ancient sages and still hid many mysteries. He examined the dirt on the wall and suggested that they might discover something if they took a sample. Alicia tried to stop her, but Mariana had already hit the wall with her hammer. Suddenly, a glowing magic circle was activated around him. Alice and Ragnar cried out in alarm, calling her. Something had been activated, something dangerous. Did Mariana just activate something crazy? While Alicia and Ragnar were calling her, they both jumped into the glowing magic circle next to her. The three were immediately swept into a sudden fall. As they fell, Ragnar managed to hold both girls and cushioned their landing safely on the ground. Mariana looked around confused and asked where they were. The space seemed strange, but to Rania it seemed similar to a place she recognized, probably the lowest level of the dungeon. In his mind he could hardly believe it. A teleportation trap had been activated. This type of event could only be done by the protagonist. Mariana admired the huge solid wall and let out a small complaint, while Alicia recovered her beak. Alicia reminded Mariana that the first thing was her personal safety, and that if she died there, she would never be able to drink coffee again. With malignity, Mariana poured coffee into a cup and offered it to Alicia, saying that it could be her last cup. Alicia was incredulous and asked where she had gotten the coffee and why she had brought it. Mariana replied that one should always bring one's own food when entering a dungeon. Rana agreed, finding no flaw in the logic. Alice sighed, but joined them for a drink. Rania also received a cup. He really felt relieved. Surprisingly, the girls kept calm. Falling to the bottom of a dungeon usually meant the end of the game. Help never came, and the monsters there were not edible. It was usually the end of the road. Alicia told Rania that she didn't want to scare him, but the situation was really dangerous. The area wasn't part of any kind of dungeon, and they couldn't even call for help. He noticed how calm Ragnar seemed, and asked her if she knew anything that she didn't. Ragnar reassured her that they would be fine, that there was something they could do. Once rested, they would head to the deepest chamber. Finally, the group began to move. Rania's thoughts returned to the magic circle. In the original game, that kind of trap would have been used by the villainous Alice. So now he was wondering who had activated it this time. He paused, but dismissed the thought. It didn't matter anymore. They had no choice but to move forward. Further inside there was a pendant, a key object in the overall strategy. It was in the final chamber of the dungeon, the holy relic. That object was crucial to save the country near the end of the story. It was obtained by progressing along the route of each character, and was used for the awakening of the saints. They had to get it back, but first they had to defeat the golem guarding the door. There should be a teleportation circle near the camera to escape. Rania decided not to tell the girls everything. He only informed them that, according to official records, defeating the guardian of the lowest level allowed to return safely. Rania was upset. The creature was hard and exhausting to face. Suddenly Alice noticed something ahead, a huge door. Maria excitedly suggested that it could be the way out, but Ragnar found it strange. Where would the golem that was supposed to guard her be? Mariana saw something next to her. A gigantic creature was slowly waking up. She had been asleep. As she got up, Rania shouted her name, and managed to get her out of danger just in time. The creature laughed, deep, resonant and ominous. Alice immediately pulled out her dagger, and asked what kind of monster it was. Mariana said that the magic it radiated was incredible, like the warmth of the sun. Ragnar agreed that it emitted that level of magical power. It could be a dragon, a fane, or maybe a demon. He remembered the being to whom Alice had entrusted her soul near the end of the story. He didn't want to get too close. He ordered the girls to stand back. Then he noticed that Alice was trembling. He wasn't moving. Ragnar fixed his gaze on her. In Alicia's mind, memories popped up. He saw the scene when the duel was over. Patricia declared the winner. Voices around her said that she had lost to a simple commoner, that she was a disgrace to the ducal house, that she humiliated herself. He held his forehead in pain. Patricia's face appeared in his vision, calling her. Then Ragnar held out his hand. He called her by name and told her to look at him. Alicia's eyes regained clarity. He came to himself. Mariana ran to his side. Ragnar asked both of them if they could use Cabal, and instructed them to stay where they were. Alicia asked what Ragnar was planning to do. He advanced with determination, declaring that he would kill the creature in front of him. The monster only laughed in response. Driven by rage, Ragnar charged, promising to make him pay for triggering his fiancée's trauma. A strong wind followed him. Ragnar thought for a moment that the monster had shrunk, but in an instant it reappeared, its body illuminated by magical energy, and cast a spell against it. Ragnar faced the magic with his sword, and split it in two. As he turned to assess back, the monster lunged, swinging a huge claw. The girls shouted alertly, but Ragnar reacted quickly. Before the claw struck, he cut off her head with a single slash. Mariana celebrated the beheading, but Alice, cautious, watched carefully. Despite losing his head, the being's body remained upright. He casually remarked that his head had fallen. Then, as if by magic, the head was attached to the body again, in an instant. Ragnar understood that that alone would not be enough to destroy him. The monster challenged him to try again, and Ragnar accepted without hesitation. He ran and plunged his sword deep into the creature's chest. He mocked her for being weak, unworthy even to face a low-ranking bravo, criticizing her flimsy defense. The creature admitted that perhaps she had been careless and counterattacked, insinuating that Ragnar was no better. Then he exhaled a wave of fiery breath. The smoke covered the area, and the girls shouted Ragnar's name, without seeing him. The monster declared that Ragnar would burn. But when the smoke cleared, Ragnar was still standing, apparently unharmed. He calmly said that the fire dragon's breath was much more intense than that. The monster taunted again, but Rania advanced. He asked who was inside him. In his mind, he remembered that demons have no physical form. They only manifest by merging with humans driven by selfish desires. Someone should have made a pact. The monster did not answer, he just smiled. Ragnar demanded to know whose magic power it was. He reached out his hand and touched the creature. His fingers almost brushed her skin. That moment provoked a violent reaction. The monster screamed and self-destructed. The explosion shook the camera. Mariana and Alicia were protected by the barrier to a quabble, but the force pushed the spell to the limit. Mariana screamed that she couldn't hold him anymore. At that instant, Rania appeared inside the barrier, reinforcing it with her own power, and protecting the girls from the worst impact. When the dust settled, Ragnar thought about who was behind the monster's control. Mariana asked if I was okay. Alicia saw that his arm was burned. Ragnar dismissed it as a minor scratch. Then he reaffirmed his promise to protect Alicia no matter what. Alice remembered the promise with the little finger and thanked him gently. Ragnar noticed that Alice seemed calmer now and was relieved. When Alice approached a broken section of stone near the edge of the well, she noticed something and asked about it. Ragnar replied that during the fight, he had seen a magic teleportation circle that would take them to the upper level. The girls accompanied him and confirmed the place. Unbeknownst to them, Ragnar was hiding the holy relic behind his back. As the three of them entered the circle, their bodies began to glow with teleportation magic. In her mind, Rania concentrated on the feeling of the magical power she had felt. Now that he had tracked him down, the next step was clear: to find the main enemy, the real rival. And when I did, I would kill him without fail.